In the last few years, it's become kind of fashionable amongst billionaires to get yourself and your teams into space. Famously, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos have made the news for firing themselves off into the atmosphere, spending millions of dollars on their adventures. Aside from the flippant waste of money, are there any other bad consequences? What would happen if something crashed? It looks as though that may be happening, as today we're going to discuss the imminent collision of a rocket crashing into the moon. So, is a rocket really going to crash into the moon? According to scientists and planetary experts, yes. Due to the advanced satellites and telescopes that we have that can track the movement of objects in space, it's possible to predict the trajectory of such objects. There is one rocket that has a trajectory that puts it on a collision course with our moon, and there's no way it's not going to hit it. It's not really something that we think about very much, but when rockets separate, most of the parts come back down to Earth. But what happens when the separated parts are not in the right place to come back? They end up kind of stuck, and these parts combined with satellites that are no longer in use make up debris that is stuck in an orbit around the Earth. Instead of having a beautifully empty space with only stars peppering the inky darkness, it's more like a city of garbage. It's too far away to see from the ground with the naked eye, but there are millions and millions of bits of debris and garbage around our planet. This debris crashes into other bits of debris and itself all the time, which isn't a big deal. However, this big chunk of rocket is going to hit something rather more visible than that. Next, whose responsibility is this rocket, and where did it come from in the first place? When people realized that a big piece of rocket was going to crash into the moon, it was originally thought to belong to Elon Musk and his SpaceX program. It was identified as such by Bill Gray, who is an expert and famous for developing astronomical software named Project Pluto. This immediately made the news, as he thought he had identified the rocket as the upper part of the Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 rocket launched this time in 2015 in February. This wasn't a billionaire vanity project, however, as this mission was approved by NASA to carry NASA's Deep Space Climate Observatory named Discover. The mission was a huge success, and the Deep Space Climate Observatory probe was put into position facing the sun, around 1.5 million kilometers away from the Earth. The upper stage of the rocket that separated and finished the journey with the probe was not able to reach high enough speeds to get into an independent orbit around the sun. It also did not have the trajectory to return back into Earth's atmosphere, where it would have been burned up upon re-entry. Instead, the huge piece of rocket has been stuck orbiting the Earth along with the other bits of space debris. But Bill Gray got an email from NASA with some questions. Soon after he voiced his findings, Gray received an email from John Giorgini, who was a part of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratories. Giorgini found that the trajectory of the Falcon 9 rocket shouldn't be taking it that close to the moon. Was it possible that the Falcon 9 rocket had somehow gone off course, or was it likely to be a misidentification? Back to the drawing board again. Bill Gray had another look at the piece of debris. The Falcon 9 rocket wasn't the only thing that had been launched around that time, and it wasn't the only piece of debris that was moving at about the same speed. He adjusted his calculations and realized that he needed to be looking for an object which was launched earlier, as this object was too far ahead in its trajectory to belong to the Falcon 9. It was instead discovered. The debris wasn't from NASA, but from the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program. The rocket itself is a Chang'e 5T1, which was launched in October 2014, and at the time was experimental. The launch was in preparation for the 2020 mission, which the Chinese government were desperate to do in order to make the country the third nation to go to the moon and bring back samples. The first of these was the United States, and the second was the Soviet Union. China wanted to be third, and so the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program was born. So, do we have any more information about the Chang'e 5Ti-1 spacecraft? Like we said a moment ago, this first experimental craft was launched in October 2014. The experimental mission was a success and paved the way for the full mission to go ahead 6 years later. It is thought that the pieces of the rocket that's going to be colliding with the moon is the craft's booster rocket. This separated booster was first spotted floating in space 6 months later, in March of 2015, when it was recorded by the Catalina Sky Survey. Is it difficult to track and keep an eye on all the different bits of space debris? Bill Gray did a blog post about this exact topic, and he revealed that, in fact, it is quite difficult sometimes. In order to identify floating space garbage, scientists must be able to identify when the object was launched, where it traveled, and the speed it is traveling at. It's definitely not easy to keep track of all of these things and determine which is which, and Bill Gray himself has compared such an undertaking to detective work. How much damage is going to be done to the moon surface by this impact? Fortunately for us and our beloved moon, the damage isn't going to be too bad. Experts at the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter have predicted that the new crater formed by the crash is going to be about 65 feet. The piece of rocket booster it's going to hit the moon weighs about 4 tons, and estimated to be traveling around 5,700 miles per hour. Fortunately, this isn't really going to damage the moon at all, apart from creating a new crater. The moon is famous for being covered in craters, many of which you could see from the Earth's surface with the naked eye. This is because the moon does not have an atmosphere like the Earth does, which burns up lots of space debris and asteroids that would otherwise collide with our planet. Because of this, even if you take out the damage done by space debris from Earth, naturally occurring craters from asteroids are made all the time. Have there been any other crashes of note onto the moon in recent years? The most obvious one in recent memory happened in March 2013. This had absolutely nothing to do with humans though, as a huge asteroid weighing around half a ton hurtled towards the moon at around 60,000 miles per hour. This is about 10 times faster than the rocket boosters we currently have our eye on. The impact from this asteroid crash in 2013 is about the same as what experts are predicting the new crater will be. This is because despite the fact that the asteroid was going much faster than the rocket boosters, it was also considerably smaller. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is not the only program dedicated to monitoring collisions on the surface of the moon. NASA also has the Lunar Impact Monitoring Project, which has been doing its own research on collisions to the moon. NASA keeps track of every single one, even when it's small chunks of space rock weighing less than a bag of sugar. There have been hundreds of these smaller impacts covering the moon and hundreds of tiny craters. This new impact caused by the Chinese rocket boosters is not going to be visible from Earth, however. It is going to be hitting the moon on the other side, meaning that we won't be able to see it. However, any spacecraft, satellites, and telescopes which are currently orbiting the moon will be able to pick it up once it has already happened, and we will be able to see the crater for ourselves. It's also worth noting that sometimes things have been crashed into the moon on purpose. This is so that we can measure seismic activity under the moon's surface, and it also means that we know what to expect. For example, during the Apollo landing missions, the upper stages of the rockets crashed into the surface so that seismometers could pick up the vibrations. The technology used to do that is not in use anymore, although there are still seismometers on some of China's equipment which might be able to pick up some interesting data. There was also a crash in 2009 intentionally caused by NASA. NASA wanted to find out if there was water vapor on the surface of the moon, so an object was sent into an icy crater to see if water vapor could be disturbed from underneath. We are going to have to wait and see if the predictions for the crash end up coming true. We can only hope that the experts are right and the surface isn't going to be too damaged. However, it's definitely one less piece of space garbage cluttering up the Earth's orbit. Thanks for watching today's video, and as always, we'll see you soon.